Okay, next question. I don't have a name on this. It was emailed to me. So it says, in the Bible, in place of God's name, we find Lord caps, Lord. I've been taught that this is not a title as landlord or lord over land, but written in place of Yahweh, YHWH, so we might not pronounce his name wrong or use it in vain. If this is correct, then how is it that the Bible versions have replaced it with Lord, capital ORD, lower capital, like a title? Christians are now copying it into their writing. Is this changing our Bible and taking away from God? How do you see this?
What you're talking about is what's called the Tetragrammaton, and that's a fancy word that means basically the four letters of God's name. The capital L, capital ORD, all caps. It wasn't really written so that we couldn't mispronounce it. It was put into Bibles so that you know when it's being used. And so specifically, most of our Bibles come from the tradition of the King James Version. And so every time what the King James translators did, instead of throwing in YHWH, which would be the transliteration from Hebrew, there was no J in Hebrew. So it would be YHWH. Instead of doing that, what they did was they replaced that with Lord, made it all caps, so that you always know when the name of God is being used. So it's not an issue with a mispronunciation. The Jews had an issue with mispronunciation. And so anytime that they would run into that word in Hebrew, so they get to YHWH, when they would go to pronounce that, they didn't pronounce the name of God. They replaced it with Adonai. And Adonai is a word that means Lord. And so that may be where you're getting this idea of replacing it with the term Lord. And so that is just something that's specific to the Hebrew nation. I don't know. You know what? I'm going to have to go through and check it out. I don't know every translation. I don't go through and scan every Old Testament translation that comes out when they're doing this stuff. If that's happening, if they're changing the all caps to capital L and then lowercase ORD at the places where Yahweh is used in the original language, I don't like that. If that's what's going on, I'd have to go through and check it out, and I will do that and see if that's going on. I don't like that because I like the ability to know whenever God's name is being used. But if you were going to actually translate it over into or bring it over into English from the Hebrew, you would probably translate that Yahweh instead of Lord all caps. It would be something along the lines of Yahweh, and we don't know that for sure because we don't know how it's pronounced, but it would be like that. So that cover that?
Yeah. How come the Hebrews used Adonai? They were afraid to say the word wrong, or they didn't want to say it, or what?
The commandment, don't take the Lord's name in vain.
Uh-huh.
The Jews, the rabbis always had a tendency to take it over the top. And so they wanted to keep people from ever mispronouncing God's name, that's not what that commandment is talking about. But that's what they did with it.
Leave it to the Jews to add a commandment.
Yeah. And so they replaced Yahweh with Adonai. So.
Okay.